Hello, everybody, and welcome to James's House of Rock. Today I thought we'd do a very special episode where we take you behind the scenes on how the show is produced. Now, I know not everyone would be interested in a topic like this, but to me personally, behind the scenes is always a super interesting thing to look at, and I've never really had anything that I could do my own behind the scenes on until right now, where there is actually some interesting things that go on behind production of this show, especially this season, which is a little bit more work than the old seasons used to be. But on that note, hello everybody, and welcome to Making the House Rock, our little behind the scenes special of James's House of Rock. So first, look at this wonderful set that I'm sitting in. We've done a variation of this set for the last two seasons, with just slight changes here and there, mostly the banner behind me here. But setting up for today's episode, we did a quick time lapse on us setting up the set. So I'm going to throw to that real quick so you guys can check that out, and we'll have some fun music and stuff while we're at it. So that's pretty much how the set is set up. Now, normally we do have some help from our studio friends here at Burlington Cable Access that help us set up. Tonight, all of them respectively were very busy, but I'd like to just mostly say that just as a shout out to them for helping us set up this show on a regular basis and helping us so much with the production of this show, setting up the production equipment necessary to do the show, the cameras, the TriCaster, even helping us put up lights and banners and all that other fun stuff. So everyone from the cable channel that has ever helped me, thank you very much for here help us set up. But that gives you an idea of how we set up here. So I'd like to toss it next to our album review corner, which for this episode is going to be Life Forms by Angels and Airwaves. And after I do the actual album review corner, I'm also going to take you a little bit behind the scenes on how they're produced on a regular basis. And for that, I'm going to toss you to me at my home office. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Album Review Corner. Today's episode is Life Forms by Angels and Airwaves, their newest album, and their first in quite a few years, actually, since the Dreamwalker, which was their album just before this. Honestly, I liked this album quite a bit, and more than anything, I feel like this album sounded a lot like it was supposed to be a Blink-182 album instead of an Angels and Airwaves album. Because it's got a lot more of that style of music. Definitely Fire in a Nameless Town and all of the singles like Kiss and Tell and Rebel Girl and stuff like that are highlights from the album. And I definitely feel like Angels and Airwaves is on a really good track that I hope they continue. Not that I actually really liked the Dreamwalker. I think that's one of my favorite albums from them. So I'm happy to get another strong album out of them. But yeah, and in case you guys are wondering, this episode was taped quite a bit of ways ago, which is why the Angels and Airwaves album has now since come out and been out for a long time. But you guys can go find it in stores if you're interested in checking it out. I would definitely suggest it, and I'm very curious to see what Angels and Airwaves has coming in the future. So for the album review corner, typically I like to just pick albums that from artists I enjoy that came out in the last month or two of the time of the recording, and I'll listen to the album just like normal, and then I'll form my opinions on it. And as you can see on the screenshot on the screen, I then assemble the generic backdrop to the album review corner in Premiere, which is my primary editing software of choice. And I just use simple pictures overlaid over an orange background to create just a fun little side thing to the core show, just to break up the pace a little bit. I do this exact same thing with Artist Spotlight. And in terms of how I pick Artist Spotlight, that's kind of just all up in the air. It's really just whatever band I'm into at the time is the biggest influence on that. And typically, to do that, I research the band, and then I pick out some photos based on my research that I've found, and compile them the same way as the album review corner. Each Each one of these segments I typically aim to be anywhere to like from 2 to 5 minutes long, just as like a little complimentary thing brought over from the early days of James' House of Rock as a show, but born renew, if you will. All right, that's great. And as is customary in most of these episodes, next up is game time. So again, we don't have a guest today, so we can't really play the game, obviously. But although it is a pretty quick and simple process, I figured I'd also do a short walkthrough on how I generally, pick the album covers and how they're produced and blurred and ready to go for the guests of the day. So we're going to toss it one more time to me in the home office. In terms of game time, I actually struggled quite a bit with this season to come up with enough generic album covers that didn't feel like I was just picking ones that I enjoyed, whether it was stuff people knew or not. I try my best to pick albums that people would like generally know, which is why I did stuff like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, or whatever that Britney Spears album is called. I already don't remember, but like I tend to try and pick generic albums that I think have a chance, just because it's all for the fun and games. I'm not trying to do like anything super hard or anything like that. But yeah, the blurring process is pretty simple, as you can see on the screen here. I just go into Photoshop and just go nuts with the blur tool until you can't really notice what is on the screen anymore, and then just put them on a hard drive and make sure that I have the clean ones and the blurred ones. It's quite a simple process, but I quite enjoy doing it. The games have always been something super fun to me on the show, and the Guess That album cover is something that I actually came up with back in season 3 when we were doing the Spin the CD, that I knew when season 4 started that was what I was going to start doing next. So I hope this gave you a little bit more of an insight on how some of the similar productions of the show happen. And I'm going to toss it back to James in the studio to introduce you to the next segment. Last but not least, one more throwaway before we'll wrap up with some other fun stuff and some future plans. We're also going to be doing our artist spotlight for today's episode, which is going to be covering early 2000s pop punk band Paramore and their life and career. And again, similar to Album Review Corner, I am going to also do a quick behind the scenes on how I research for them and how I make those as well. Hello everybody and welcome to Artist Spotlight. Today we're going to be doing pop punk band Paramore. Formed in Tennessee in 2004, the members currently consist of Hayley Williams, Taylor York, and Zach Farrow. Hayley Williams is the only listed member of the band's contract and the only member to perform on all 5 albums. Their most well-known work includes the radio hit single Misery Business from their second album, Riot, as well as the single Ain't It Fun from their self-titled 4th album. Originally, Williams was signed to Atlantic Records as a solo artist, destined to be remade into a pop star. She resisted and insisted she play rock with a band. The label agreed with some resistance. According to Williams, the name Paramore came from the maiden name of one of the mothers of the bass player. Once the group learned the meaning of the homophone paramour, secret lover, they decided to adopt the name, using the Paramore spelling. Ended up getting signed to Fueled by Ramen, where they currently are. I believe the band is currently touring at the moment, with new music on the way. This has been the Artist Spotlight. Thank you guys for tuning in. So the newest addition to the James' House of Rock family brand, if you will, of shows and productions is JHR Backstage, our brand new podcast that is released weekly alongside the show, hosted by me and series director Varys Connolly. And while after I'm done actually here on set, we're going to be heading in to record the episode that's going to be coming alongside this episode, and we'll walk you through I'll walk you through some of the ways that we record the podcast and how we do and how I come up with ideas and stuff. And we're going to cut to that after this. But for now, I'd like to say thank you guys all so much for watching the show on a regular basis. Thank you all so much for all of the friends and family and production staff here at BCAT that helped me produce the show. You've all been absolutely fantastic. This show means an absolute lot to me because, of course, I've been producing it for so long. And I thought it'd be really fun to throw you behind the scenes. And I mean, some of you that are watching probably know me personally and have seen the whole ways that this show gets produced, but it's always fun to take a look back. And even a couple of years from now, if the show has evolved past that, I can look back on this episode, see how we used to do it. So alongside talking through how we do the podcast, I'm also going to walk you guys through how I do the editing process for these episodes, like assembling it all and getting it exported and getting it uploaded and getting it to the studio and a whole bunch of other fun things that go into the final post-production of this show. But we're going to throw it to the podcast real quick and then the editing part, and we'll be right back here for just a final goodbye. So JHR Backstage is an idea that I had actually back in like 2017, I think I mentioned in one of the podcasts, and it's an idea that I've wanted to do for a really long time because a companion podcast to James Sass Rock always felt like a no-brainer because obviously due to the nature of how we shoot the show, we can't really talk about like up-to-date things. But the podcast gets rid of that barrier because we can record it on a weekly basis with minimal problems. So we're allowed to keep up with the times a little bit more, although my lovely co-host Varys and I mostly talk about just random generic music stuff. But to give you a little insight, we have the lovely podcast studio here at Burlington Cable Access Television, where Varys and I have recorded the majority of the episodes for James Sass Rock. There were a few there that we had to record in our home studios, but for the most part, we're here in this lovely studio that you see on camera, or on screen. And usually one or the both of us will come in to a general episode shoot day and have like an idea in mind already of what we want to talk about. And then if we both came in with an idea, we discuss the idea a little bit further to see whose idea gets to be the winner of this week's. And then maybe we'll push the other idea to the following week or whatever might happen. Or maybe we'll combine both ideas and talk about both. But yeah, in a similar fashion to how I'm recording this audio now, we just, as the podcast goes, Varys and I just sit down in front of some mics and we talk. That's the most extensive what we do. And I have a blast doing the podcast. And then after the podcast is done, I typically have to edit a version of it for the television and then a version for Spotify and other streaming platforms. So again, just similar to the Album Review Corner and the Artist Spotlight, I'll toss it into Premiere with a stock images that I change with each episode, followed by me uploading the episode to RSS.com. That's the provider that I use for JHR Backstage, which then distributes it to all other streaming platforms. But yeah, it's a super fun process, and I hope this gave you a little bit more of an idea on the background and production of JHR Backstage. Thank you guys all so much for watching. We really appreciate you coming along with us, and I hope you learned just a little bit more about maybe the world of production, as well as just this show in general, if it is something that you like to watch. Maybe you learned something new about the way that we do things. But thank you guys all so much, and I will see you next week with a brand new awesome guest.